Formerly being a driven, ambitious, hardworking, aspiring screenwriter, I used to spend nearly every waking moment working on scripts and strategizing how to get an agent to take me on and getting to LA. That was the goal of my plan, and I didn't care what any doubters said who tried to potentially deter me. I was going for it all. My mind that never stops creating ideas for stories and unique situations was going to pay off for me. I didn't care about fame and fortune. I only cared about doing what I loved doing, which was screenwriting and acting, and hopefully one day making it on the big screen through one, if not both of those avenues. I was well aware of the risks. I knew the odds were heavily stacked against me, but I also knew my concepts were better than most other screenwriters who simply wanted to bust down Hollywood's door to merely gain self-recognition and vain success. I was different, and I had a genuine love for the integrity of storytelling. I watched a documentary, Tales from the Script, that was about the business of screenwriting in Hollywood, and the figure I would never forget is they said that 99% of the scripts that companies and studios receive from aspiring screenwriters sucked. 99%. I knew I could make it if I could just keep honing my skills. After all, I already had been given a recommend grade for one of my scripts that I submitted to a coverage service, and the owner relayed to me that only about 1% of scripts ever get that coveted grade. In my mind, that was confirmation I was good enough to break in the industry and carve out a nice career doing what I loved doing. Shortly after that, a small-time producer in LA offered to produce that same screenplay of mine, but he wanted me to sign over creative control. I just couldn't bring myself to do it. I wanted to wait for a bigger deal where I had more say. Kind of a cocky move for someone with no experience in the business, but as far as I was concerned, I was one of the best up-and-coming screenwriters in the industry, and I would have a plethora of opportunities. As a Christian, my faith fueled me. I always believed I could accomplish the seemingly impossible. I knew God gave me a gift and talent to write, and an extremely vivid imagination, so I was determined to not let it go to waste. I wrote secular scripts with Christian undertones that conveyed a message of faith without being preachy or offensive. I had a purpose. I knew there was a lot of moral corruption among much of Hollywood, but I wanted my work to change the environment for the positive. Being completely naive, I used to think that many people, the actors, directors, producers, etc., merely gave in to temptation and did drugs, cheated on spouses, and drank themselves into a stupor simply because they could. I would never allow myself to be affected by those temptations. You have to want to partake in those activities. I would never give in to that lifestyle. I've never done a drug, smoked a cigarette, or been drunk. Those things don't interest me. I'm too focused on my God-given purpose. And then in 2014, I saw this fairly low-budget indie horror movie, Starry, and everything changed for me. I am not sure of the co-writers, co-directors, Dennis Widmeyer and Kevin Kolsch, intention of this film, but I know how it affected me personally. I read some comments online where some said this movie was glorifying the devil and the practice of Satanism, but I have no idea how they arrived at that conclusion. It was just the opposite to me. It was a cautionary tale that displays a peek into what many ambitious people must do to attain their dreams. I wonder if those commenters watched the whole movie. As I watched this movie for the first time, something resonated with me. My discernment kicked into high gear, and I felt this movie was absolutely authentic and offered dark glimpses into what it really takes to make it in the cutthroat business of Hollywood in the entertainment industry. I'm not sure if Widmeyer and Kolsch were writing a fictional horror story, or if they were trying to expose a truth they had somehow learned about themselves. I can say that this movie was superbly done on a low budget, and these two talented guys are not big-time writers, directors in Hollywood. So, maybe their story has some merit. If you haven't watched the movie, I highly recommend watching it, and you may want to stop this video and then come back to it, as I am about to reveal spoilers. But if not, you can go ahead and finish this video and then watch the movie if you'd prefer also. So, our central character, Sarah, is a typical struggling actress in Los Angeles going to audition after audition and having no success. Just from the opening sequence, you can tell the direction the story is going, and it feels very true and authentic. At one of the auditions, one of the casting agents notices Sarah has an anger issue. She wants to see just how angry Sarah can get and asks her to give in to her anger and have a tantrum while yanking out strands of her hair. Sarah obeys the request, and so the agent calls her for another audition where the lights go dark and the casting agent tells her to take off all of her clothes and come out of herself. This has spiritual implications. The agent clearly wants to see if Sarah looks like a potential candidate to sell her soul to the devil for fame and fortune. Of course, Sarah is apprehensive at first, but because of how ambitious she is, fights through those spiritual warnings that God installed deep inside of us and barrels through the awkward nudity. The agent is pleased. You can tell where it's going. Sarah gets another meeting. This time the agent takes her to the office of the studio's CEO, and he offers her the lead role in a movie that will instantly turn her into a star overnight, in which she ecstatically accepts, until he insinuates he wants sex from her, in which her instincts kick in that warn her this isn't right, so she flees his office. Shortly after, Sarah's ambitious nature consumes her, and at this point she is ready to sell her soul to the devil. She calls up the agent and asks for one more meeting with our horny CEO, and enters his office and is ready to service him like Jiffy Lube. But it wasn't just sex he was after. He needs her commitment to give him her soul, and she does. Because this movie suggests that's what you have to do to rise to stardom in Hollywood, and I believe it. I have always noticed something was just off about Hollywood. They don't refer to it as Holly Weird for nothing. That's far more than a mere wisecracker shot at humor. It rings true. It really is a very odd place. Ever wondered why some actors and actresses make it big while others don't? Ever wondered what causes these peculiar behaviors? Lindsay Lohan, Miley Cyrus, Amanda Bynes, notice they all seem normal as kids, and once they grow up, they transform into something else? You may write it off as bad choices and drugs, but where do they get the drugs from? Who is giving it to them? If Hollywood is good, then why not get them help before they spiral out of control? I admit that years ago, I had seen things online about celebrities selling their soul, but I thought it was merely compromising their morals, which is bad enough in its own right. But I didn't fathom it meant to actually sell your soul to the devil, similarly to the way a Christian gives their life to Christ. And speaking of Christ, the more I meditate on this movie, I am convinced that Jesus is nowhere in the entertainment industry. It is Satan's domain. I used to think I could make it in Hollywood and God could use my work to touch people's lives and draw them closer to Him. I no longer believe that. Hollywood is a completely godless industry that specializes in illusion and deception. Since watching Starry Eyes and careful consideration and some research that aligns right up with the content of the film, I no longer have the desire to work in Hollywood. I rarely watch movies anymore. I didn't make a decision to stop. I just don't really have the motivation or desire like I used to. And when I do, it's generally indie stuff that's likely not even associated with the Hollywood elites. I still love the concepts of motion pictures and storytelling, so I will continue to write and possibly even work on low budget projects that I have in the past if any opportunities arise. But I will leave the big time to the ones who want to sell their soul for it. You can have it. I'm going to stick with Jesus.